Hey there, thank you so much for coming back for another video. If you're new, my name is Mel and I love sharing these cooking videos. And today I'm going to be sharing with you 4 brand new sheet pan dinners. I hope you love them as much as I do. Let's go ahead and get on into it. First up today, we're making these glazed ham steaks with potatoes and green beans. For this recipe, you'll need to preheat your oven to 400 degrees. To begin, I have about 7 medium to small potatoes. I am using red and I had 2 yellow potatoes that I decided to go ahead and use as well. I'm just going to cube these up into pretty small pieces. Next, I'm going to work on my green beans. This is about 1 pound. I did wash these really well and now I'm just going to trim the ends off. Moving over to my sheet pan, I added down about 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and now I'm just transferring over the potatoes. On top of the potatoes, I'm adding a little bit more olive oil just to help the seasoning stick. As far as the seasonings go for the potatoes, I'm adding about a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, onion powder, and salt. I'm just getting in here with my hands and making sure my potatoes are covered really well with all the seasonings, mixing them up, and then I'm going to spread these into a nice single layer, and then these are going to go in the oven to bake for about 15 minutes. While those are baking, we're going to get started on our glaze for the ham steaks. In this bowl, I'm adding 3 tablespoons of packed brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of honey, 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard. I realized I didn't have any, so I just used regular, but you'll want to use Dijon mustard. 2 teaspoons of minced garlic, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, and 1 tablespoon of water. Once everything's in the bowl, go ahead and get that mixed together. You're also going to add a couple seasonings in this bowl as well. I'm adding a 1/2 teaspoon of rosemary, a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, and then you'll salt and pepper to taste. I just added a small dash of each. At this point, my potatoes were coming out of the oven. I went ahead and made sure that they were becoming fork tender, and then I went ahead and mixed them around on the sheet pan a little bit, and I pushed them all to the edges to make room in the center for my ham steaks. Once my ham steaks were down, I went ahead and added my glaze over top of both of them. I ended up using all of the glaze. The glaze does kind of cook down off of the ham steaks, but it's actually a really good combination. Next, you'll just add your green beans around the ham steaks over top of the potatoes wherever you see fit. It doesn't really matter, they just need to be on the pan somewhere. I did take the seasonings that we used on the potatoes earlier and sprinkled the green beans with just a little of each one. That way they'd have some flavor on them as well. This went back in the oven for 20 more minutes until my green beans were tender and the ham steak started to brown up a little bit. Here's what my finished plate looked like. As you can see, there is a lot of garlic on top of these ham steaks. If that's not your cup of tea, you can wipe some of that garlic off there like my husband did, but honestly, I thought all the garlic on there was delicious. Up next, we're making these pepper, onion, and cheese brats with some french fries. I started by preheating my oven to 400 degrees. As you can see, I lined half of my baking sheet with some foil. I'm adding down about a tablespoon of olive oil, and then on top of the foil, we're adding on our brats. I'm using beer brats for this recipe, but you could also use spicy or regular, whatever you want. On top of the brats, I'm adding on some sliced red onion. You only need a little bit of this. And then you're also going to add some chopped bell pepper. I'm using red and green because I already had that on hand, already chopped in the freezer. On top of everything, I'm adding about another tablespoon of olive oil, followed by some seasonings. I'm adding a half teaspoon of onion powder, a half teaspoon of oregano, a few shakes of black pepper, a fourth teaspoon of salt, a half teaspoon of garlic powder, and a half teaspoon of smoked paprika. I just tried to mix that around a little bit and spread the seasonings around, and then this went into the oven for about 15 minutes. After the 15 minutes in the oven, I pulled it out and I just mixed up the peppers and onions and tried to flip over all of the brats. Now on the other side of the sheet pan, I'm going to be adding some french fries, and I'm going to add a single layer of fries to this side of the sheet pan. Since these fries were just plain regular fries, I went ahead and seasoned them with a little bit of onion powder and a few shakes of Cajun seasoning just to give them some spice. I got those mixed around and then this went back into the oven for an additional 20 minutes. Pulling these out of the oven this time, your french fries should be close to being done and your brats and peppers will be all the way done by now. I went ahead and mixed my french fries up just a little bit. Next, you can use hoagie buns or hot dog buns. I just had hot dog buns, so that's what I'm using today. Go ahead and put your brats into the buns and add some of the peppers and onions over the top. Once you have all the brats on the buns, you can remove the foil, and this is why we add the foil, so we would have a nice clean slate over here. I'm now going to add all my brats with the buns over to this side of the sheet pan. Over top of each one of my brats, I'm just adding some sharp cheddar cheese. After adding the cheese, this is going back in the oven for 5 more minutes. In these 5 minutes, that will allow the cheese to melt, the buns will toast up, and your french fries will finish up as well. Here's what my finished plate looked like. As you can see, the cheese melted really nicely over these, and this is actually one of our favorite way to eat brats. These come together so easily with some really great flavor, and the french fries cook perfectly alongside and get nice and crispy. Up next, we're making our favorite $1 million pork chops with some potatoes and broccoli. I started by preheating my oven to 400 degrees, and then over to my cutting board I have about 6 potatoes. I'm going to go ahead and cube those. They don't have to be super small pieces. Over to my sheet pan, I'm adding about a tablespoon of olive oil and then transferring over all my potatoes onto there. Over top of the potatoes, I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil to help the seasoning stick. And for the seasonings, I'm adding about a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, a 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder and garlic powder. And then I'm also going to be adding some of my favorite Parmesan ranch seasoning. I just buy this at Walmart. It's already pretty salty, so I didn't add any extra salt. After getting those mixed together, I put those in the oven for 15 minutes to start. While my potatoes are baking, I'm going to get my bacon started. I'm just cooking about 5 slices of bacon. If you want to keep this 100% just a sheet pan meal, you can use bacon bits instead. And you can skip this step here if you want to. I decided to use the same pan as I cooked the bacon in and just kind of brown up my thick pork chops a little bit. I just let them cook for about 2 minutes on each side, lightly seasoning them with some salt, pepper, and garlic powder. Now to get started on the topping, I'm chopping up 2 green onions, and I'm also going to chop up the bacon that we cooked. Into a decent sized bowl, I have 1 block of cream cheese that's been softened, a 1/4 cup of mayonnaise. You want to make sure you use mayonnaise and not Miracle Whip. The green onions I cut up with the bacon, 1 cup of mild cheddar cheese, and then 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. Go ahead and get all that mixed together. It is going to be pretty thick, just do your best. Now my potatoes are coming out of the oven. I went ahead and just used a spatula to mix them around, make sure they weren't sticking or burning. And then I just pushed them all over to one side. Now I'm just transferring over my pork chops to the sheet pan as well. Like I said, I just tried to brown them up a little bit and get them started cooking, but they still need to finish cooking in the oven. The next thing you'll do is take that mixture we just made and you'll evenly divide it between the 6 pork chops. After spreading that around, you'll top each one with a little bit more mild cheddar cheese. And since these pork chops took up more room than I was expecting, right here in the middle where I'm showing you with my hand, I was going to add some fresh broccoli and let that cook in here as well, but I didn't have enough space. My sheet pans are kind of small, so I just decided to go ahead and steam that, but this could be a full sheet pan dinner. I added this back in the oven one more time for 15 minutes just to finish cooking the pork chops. Here's my finished plate. Like I said, I messed up on my space and I didn't have enough room to cook the broccoli in the oven, so I just went ahead and steamed that on my stove top. But you could just roast that in the oven for the 15 to 20 minutes that the pork chops are cooking in there. And this can be a one-pan meal and be absolutely delicious with these crispy potatoes, which by the way are fantastic in that pork chop topping. For the last recipe, we're doing this really easy barbecue chicken, corn, and potato wedge meal. I did start off by preheating my oven to 400 degrees, and then for my potato wedges, I'm just cutting each of these 3 potatoes in half, and then each half is going to be cut into 4 wedges. Once those are all cut up, I'm adding them into a bowl, and I'm going to drizzle about 2 tablespoons of olive oil over my potatoes and just toss them in that oil. To season these potato wedges, I'm using 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. Now that our potato wedges are ready to go, we are going to spray down our sheet pan with a little bit of nonstick spray and then dump your potato wedges onto your sheet pan. Just spread those out, try to make them so they are not touching each other and not overlapped. Then these are going in the oven to bake for about 20 minutes. While my potato wedges are baking, I'm going to get started on my chicken. I have 2 chicken breasts here. I'm going to cut both of them down the centers to create 4 pieces of chicken. Once the 20 minutes are up for the potato wedges, they're going to come out of the oven looking like this. You just want to make sure you flip all of them over and push them all over to one side of the pan. Next, we're adding on our chicken to the other far side of the sheet pan. If you want to, you can add salt and pepper to these. I didn't really think it was necessary because we are about to cover these in barbecue sauce. You can add as much or as little barbecue sauce as you want, just make sure they're covered up. If you don't want the rest of your food getting touched by the barbecue sauce and liquid that comes off the chicken as it cooks, I would suggest doing what we did with the brats and adding a piece of foil on this side while the chicken cooks. That way the juices stay contained. In the center between the chicken and the potato wedges, I'm adding 5 pieces of corn. You can get this corn in the freezer section. It comes in a pack of 6, but I can only fit 5 on my sheet pan. I'm just adding a little bit of salt and pepper to each side. Now this is going back in the oven for about 15 to 20 minutes until your chicken has cooked all the way through. Here's what my finished plate looked like. I had a little bit of everything. This meal is really easy to throw together, and this should please even the pickiest of eaters. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you can't tell, I have been on a sheet pan kick lately. I have one more sheet pan video coming up in the coming weeks, and then from there, we'll see where things go. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.